So I try not to make these videos too technical, but this particular question has come up several times, so I decided to make one and hopefully it answers some of your questions. So if you're a student who is interested in collecting, analyzing, observing brainwaves, you may want to know the difference between different file formats that you have to deal with when you collect, analyze, observe brainwaves using specific neural headsets, specific software, etc. So this particular video is hopefully going to try to answer those questions. So it doesn't matter whichever neural headset that you use, it has to comply with something called 1020 system, which is a standardized system that exists within the neuroscience world that corresponds to the location of different sensors that we have with those sensors from the neural headsets on the scalp. These coordinates are standardized such that anyone in the world who is interested in collecting, observing, analyzing brainwaves needs to comply with this 1020 system. So any type of neural headset that you purchase needs to comply with this standard. The coordinates of the 1020 system that are standardized are communicated to the software of the neural headset that you use, such that it has a specific coordinates. In other words, it's standardized with all neural headsets that are being developed and we use today, if we accessible today. They have a specific coordinates that need to be saved in a way that the analysis software that you use can find the location of these sensors, and those locations have specific coordinates. These coordinates need to be saved in a specific type of file with a specific type of file extension, so that when you have collected the data and you want to use a software to analyze that data, that software need to be able to pinpoint exactly which sensor, which part of the scalp you are referring to. And that specific sensor has a specific coordinate in its location that is identified and listed as a specific number coordinates within that file that the software can then use. And then that is how it can pinpoint which sensor you're collecting data for. This particular file that includes and has the coordinate of the different sensor that you have on the scalp, depending on which neural headset you use, is a CED file. Extension of it needs to read CED. You can create the CED file yourself. If you know the coordinates, you can just open a text editor, any text editor, and then list those coordinates in a specific rows and specific columns, and then name that file something, whatever you like, but then give it the extension of CED file. And so when you use analysis software such as EEG Lab, it will ask you where is the CED file, and then you can tell it where to find the CED file. The caveat here is that if you choose to create the CED file yourself manually, you definitely need to know the coordinates of the sensors that you're using. In my case, I use the Emotive Epoch neural headset series, and that specific neural headset has 14 sensors only. It doesn't have those full-fledged, your traditional EEG neural headset number of sensors. And so I had to create a specific CED file so that the software that I use to analyze these brain waves collected from these sensors knew exactly which coordinates I was talking about. In my book, I will put a link below this video. I have listed the exact coordinates of the sensors of these 14 different sensors that Emotive Epoch uses, because Emotive Epoch Neuro Headset series do not use all the different 1020 system sensors. It only uses 14. And how it needs to be listed in terms of rows and columns, I have also added in my book. If you don't want to use my book, you can search for it online and see where you can find it. I think some people have listed it on GitHub, I'm not sure, but that is how you can create this CED manually. In my book, I have also listed how to do a step-by-step guide how to create it manually. Essentially, what you first do is to open a text editor on your computer, and then you add these rows and columns exactly as I had listed, or if you can find them somewhere else, and then you save it as a .ced file, and you put it somewhere where you know where it is. And then once you connect your software data analysis to your data, it will ask you, where can I find this CED file? Where can I find this information? In my case, I use EEG Lab, and that is when you can tell it, here is where you can find it, because hopefully you've saved it somewhere that you can remember the path to that CED file on your computer. Another way to get this CED file is actually through the Neuro Headset itself. And then once you install the Neuro Headset, once you set it up, I've also covered this in the book, by the way, step-by-step guide. There is a way that the Emotive Epoch, in this case, does create a CED file, because they have to comply with the 1020 system coordinates of these sensors, and they also have created it, and they put it somewhere on your computer once you install and set up the Neuro Headset along with its software. Having said that, a lot of people had problems finding exactly where Emotive saved it, but also a lot of people had issues actually running it. And that is a reason, as a workaround, I created myself manually, and I think other people do that too, because when I created manually, I learned that it worked much better, much smoother. There was no issue at all, because there's always compatibility issue between the hardware and software when you run these different programs. But it took me a while to find those coordinates, so it was not like I just found them. I had to read a lot of forums and whatnot, and so that's why I tried to make it easy and put it in one of the chapters in my book. Just see the link if you're interested. Type of file that you need to know if you're interested in collecting, analyzing, reading, observing, and studying brainwaves are two types of files that are called Edf Files, .edf, or CSV files. These files essentially are just extension as to where the raw brainwaves data is collected. And so most of the time when you work with a Neuro Headset, they automatically save the raw data on your computer or wherever you have it. It could be in the cloud as well, either as an EDF file or as a CSV file. It doesn't really matter, because it's either or. In my case, because I work with Emotive Epoch Neuro Headset systems, they created an EDF file. Essentially, you don't need to do anything to create those files, because as soon as you start putting the neural headset on and you start collecting data, the moment you hit start and the moment you hit finish to finish collecting the brainwaves data, the neural headset itself, with its own software, it creates that file on your computer. You just have to know where it creates it, but usually you're able to tell it, because once you install the neural headset, it'll tell you that this is the path where I'm going to save everything related to, in this case, emotive epoch neural headset series. And so it either creates an EDF or a CSV file, or it asks you. Sometimes it asks you. I think in my case it asked me, and I just said EDF file because it was a little bit easier for me. But many people choose CSV files mainly for the reason that CSV is compatible to convert into Excel. So a lot of people actually prefer to work with the raw data, raw EEG data, in the Excel format or Google Sheet format. And so if you choose to collect your raw data, if you tell the program to save it as a CSV file, then the good news is that you can easily convert it, put it into an Excel sheet, if that is what you want to do, because a lot of people use then the mathematical equations of the Excel sheet to use it to analyze their EEG data. If you're one of those people, you can easily just collect the data as a CSV file. In my case, I chose EDF file because I wasn't interested in using Excel sheet to do my raw data analysis. I just used EDF file because I knew that I was going to use EEG lab software or open source environment to analyze my raw EEG data, so I didn't really need a CSV file. Having said that, it's really up to you how you want to do it. But nonetheless, I just wanted to mention the difference between the two. The reason I wanted to mention the difference between the two is because there is sometimes, especially if you're new to EEG data, a little bit of a confusion in terms of what is what. And I know it because I was there myself, and that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, because I really wanted to help people who just starting or just students. So to recap, the difference between the two is that the CED file, it includes the coordinates of the sensors that you use in your neural headset. You need to have that saved to tell the software that you're using to collect the data, to tell it which sensors you're using. Otherwise, if it doesn't have any coordinates, it doesn't know what to expect and where these sensors are, basically. And the other type of formats were EDF and CSV files, which basically they just include the raw data that the neural headset collects, and there is nothing much you need to do to create them. The hardware and software, they create it for you. You just need to tell the software in advance, once it asks you whether you want to save it as an EDF or CSV. Sometimes it asks if you want to save it as both. It really depends on what neural headset and what type of software you use. Okay guys, I hope this was helpful to you. I see you guys next time. Thank you. Bye.